Bonjour tout le monde, bienvenue à Sudbury. I hope everyone's been enjoying their summer. I know it's been a busy one for everyone, especially if, like me, you've been watching the Olympics as keenly as I have over the past few weeks. Évidemment, on est extrêmement fiers de notre équipe canadienne. Les femmes ont réussi à avoir un impact extraordinaire, des performances magnifiques. We all are extremely enthusiastic about how wonderful our Olympians performed in Rio, and I know everyone's looking forward to the kickoff of the Rio Paralympic Games in about a week as well. We had a really packed schedule this weekend, and it reflects the busy fall we're all anticipating. There's a lot of things on the agenda, but what ties them all together, as it has since before the campaign was even launched last year, is that they're all focused on people, on making the daily lives of busy mums and dads and grandparents and students and new Canadians a little less challenging and a little better. Now, everyone's going to measure that in a slightly different way. Some people want to be able to get to work without having to wait for 3 full subway cars to pass them by. Others need help buying their textbooks or saving up for a family visit. However you measure it, the things that we've done and the things that we will continue to do will find their inspiration and their motivation in people. It's why we do this work. And so, when we looked at our fall agenda, we considered how our priorities will benefit Canadians and what kind of relationships we need to build so that we can deliver on our promises. We agreed that there are 3 key relationships we need to keep in mind, 3 relationships that are central to our ability to continue to deliver real change for all Canadians and, in particular, for Canada's middle class and those working hard to join it. Premièrement, on doit parler de nos liens avec les gouvernements des provinces et des territoires. Je pense que si vous demandez aux premiers ministres provinciaux, ils vous diront que c'est essentiel d'avoir un partenaire à Ottawa qui est prêt à s'asseoir avec eux. Un partenaire qui n'hésite pas à avoir des discussions franches et qui essaye réellement de déterminer comment les gouvernements peuvent travailler ensemble de façon plus efficace pour mieux servir les Canadiens, parce que c'est ça qui compte. Et c'est pas simplement une question de popularité. L'important, c'est de pouvoir faire notre travail. Au cours des derniers mois, nous avons annoncé des ententes d'investissement importants en matière d'infrastructure. Ces ententes que nous avons conclues sont lorsque nous améliorerons les relations avec les provinces et les territoires. Mais je tiens à être clair. L'objectif, c'est d'améliorer ces relations pour mieux servir les Canadiens dans toutes les provinces et territoires. Likewise, we need to continue the work needed to renew Canada's relationship with Indigenous peoples. That is going to be a long process, and it's going to be a complex one. It involves doing some things that historically governments haven't been that great at. Things like being open and transparent, like owning up to mistakes and learning from them. But one thing we agreed on this weekend is that the relationship between Canada and Indigenous peoples is so important, and the trust that we need to have in each other so essential to our shared success, that we must continue to make this relationship a priority moving forward. Canadians are telling us that in the same way that women's issues are Canada's issues, Indigenous issues are Canada's issues. So know this, our government will not rest until we make life better for Indigenous people right across this country. And finally, as a group, Cabinet talked about the important relationship between Canada and the United States. It's a relationship built on shared values and also on a unique kind of economic interdependence. Governments on both sides of the border want good jobs and great opportunities for all citizens, particularly those in the middle class and those working hard to join it. And in recent months, we've taken positive steps towards making sure that we pursue our shared economic goals, such as growth for the middle class, in responsible and sustainable ways. It's an important relationship, and we're confident that it will continue to be a productive and prosperous one for many years to come. Ces liens que nous avons bâtis avec les provinces et les territoires, les peuples autochtones et les États-Unis ont encadré les discussions importants ont un impact sur nos relations avec ces trois partenaires. L'environnement et les changements climatiques sont un bon exemple parce que la façon dont nous aborderons ces défis et les possibilités liées au changement climatique aura des répercussions sur tout le monde. So as much as the past few days were an opportunity for us to take stock and to reflect upon what we've been able to accomplish in the past 9 months, it was a reminder that there is still more hard work ahead of us than there is behind us. And we're looking forward to the hard work that lies ahead. J'ai maintenant hâte de prendre vos questions.
Katie Simpson, CBC News. On Saturday night, 11.7 million Canadians watched as Gord Downie gave you a glowing endorsement, but he also put you on the spot and called you to account for the promises that you have made for Indigenous communities. And he said, quote, "You're going to take us where we need to go." Are you comfortable with the onus that Mr. Downie has placed on you?
I was, like so many of us, incredibly happy to be sharing in such an extraordinary moment that was watched not just coast to coast to coast, but around the world. It was an amazing concert and an extraordinary opportunity to celebrate a veritable Canadian institution. Gord's vote of confidence in me, his encouragement was extremely touching, but also is echoed in the many conversations I have with Canadians right across the country. People know that renewing the relationship with Indigenous peoples, moving forward in a real and substantive way, is something that's important to our economy, to our present, to our future, and to our very identity as Canadians. We have an awful lot of work to do, and it's not going to happen overnight. But Gord also knows well that as important as words are, actions matter deeply. And that's why the $8.4 billion we put forward in Budget 2016 towards strengthening Indigenous communities and education, the concrete actions we're making from the inquiry into missing and murdered women and girls to so many different relationships that we're working on hard to be able to deliver concretely for Indigenous communities is key to this government's success and indeed key to our success as a country.
And as a follow-up on this subject, we know that at this cabinet retreat, you did hear from Sir Michael Barber, and he said that come this fall, you're going to have to make difficult decisions where you can't please all of the people all of the time. On this file, is that where your government is that a compromise your government's going to have to make?
We are pleased that over the past 9 months we were able to deliver on significant elements of our campaign platform, raising taxes on the wealthiest 1% so we could lower them on the middle class, and delivering a historic new Canada Child benefit that's going to have a real tangible impact on 9 out of 10 Canadian families right across the country, millions upon millions of Canadians who will benefit from a more generous monthly check that's not taxable and will make a real difference. But we also know there are many other things that we are going to need ahead of us on everything from natural resources to investments to trade deals. And these are the kinds of things that Canadians voted us to build in terms of growth for the middle class, in terms of opportunities for Canadians and prosperity for our citizens.
Oshnia Maratunga, Lambda Publications from Laurentian University student newspaper. I want to ask, as the youth minister and a young student who applied for it myself, what progress do you hope to make in the creation of the Prime Minister's Youth Council and the impact it'll make for the country as a whole and young Canadians?
Young people have long had a bad rap for being disconnected or apathetic when, in fact, young people care deeply about their community and their world and are just looking for opportunities to be heard. One only has to look at the voting patterns in the last federal election to realize the significant contribution and impact that young people have on public discourse and indeed on governance in this country. I'm looking forward to be able to work with an extraordinary group of young people from right across the country who will weigh in not just on youth issues, but on a broad range of policy decisions that this government is taking to help guide me to make sure that we are thinking about young people in our decision making, but also thinking about the long-term benefits and prosperity of this country on so many different levels. So I'm excited about pulling together that youth council and continue to encourage young people from across the country to step up, get involved in their communities in various ways, but also on the Prime Minister's Youth Council.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister. Philip Ling, CTV National News. Kensington Palace and the Canadian Heritage released the details of Will and Kate's visit to Canada. You're from British Columbia. What are you most excited about to show them? What are the locations that you want to highlight?
I'm very much looking forward to spending a time with the royal family. I think this is an opportunity for us to showcase not just to the family, but to the world that watches them, how extraordinary Canada is, how incredibly beautiful our West Coast is, and indeed to celebrate the extraordinary success that we have in Canada, being an inclusive, diverse country that benefits from the most beautiful geography of any country in the world.
Will your family be accompanying you on this trip, and will you be seeing Will, Kate, Prince George, and Princess Charlotte?
We're still working out many of the details, but suffice it to say, Sophie's looking forward to an opportunity to showcase extraordinary Canadian fashion designers.
Bonjour, Daniel Thibault de Radio-Canada. Je veux revenir sur l'appui que M. Donny vous a offert samedi. Vous avez été visiblement touché. On semblait vous étiez touché quand on vous a vu à la télévision, la larme à l'œil. À quel point est-ce que vous avez senti que ça vous mettait de la pression, ce genre d'appui-là? Et dans vos conversations avec M. Donny avant le spectacle, est-ce qu'il vous a donné un certain nombre d'indications, vous donnait un conseil sur comment attaquer cette situation-là?
Je connais, d'abord, je connais la formation Tragically Hip en tant que fan depuis que je suis au secondaire. Mais je connais Gord pour avoir jasé avec lui plusieurs moments au fil des dernières années. Et il a toujours été un homme profondément passionné par la justice sociale, par le territoire canadien et les défis que vivent les Premières Nations et les peuples autochtones. C'est des conversations sur les valeurs et sur les principes de ce que rend ce pays extraordinaire qui nous ont toujours animés dans nos discussions et d'ailleurs qui ont animé sa carrière en tant qu'artiste et que chanteur. Alors, pour moi, oui, ça met de la pression qu'un ami comme Gord s'attend à beaucoup de moi et de mon gouvernement, mais les Canadiens s'attendent à beaucoup de ce gouvernement et on a une équipe extraordinaire en Carolyn Bennett et Jody Wilson-Raybould qui ont fait des présentations cette fin de semaine sur les relations avec les peuples autochtones. Nous avons beaucoup de travail à faire, mais je sais aussi que nous sommes sur la bonne voie.
Et dans les réalisations, les engagements dans le dossier autochtone, mais dans tous les autres, vous avez parlé de livraison logis dans le courant des 2 derniers jours. Monsieur Barber vous a dit ça va être plus compliqué et ça va faire des mécontents. Il faut prendre des décisions. Vous voulez prendre les bonnes décisions. Est-ce que vous commencez à vous dire que, par nécessité, certaines promesses vont devoir peut-être prendre un peu plus de temps?
Les promesses qu'on a faites, c'était des promesses qui sont alignées avec les priorités des Canadiens. La croissance économique pour la classe moyenne et pour ceux qui travaillent fort pour en faire partie. De la justice et des opportunités pour les communautés autochtones, un respect de l'environnement tout en créant de la croissance économique. C'est des choses auxquelles les gens s'attendent et sur lesquelles on est en train de travailler. On a fait des investissements historiques dans les communautés autochtones sur 5 ans. On parle de 8,4 milliards de dollars. Mais effectivement, comment on va s'assurer que cet argent aboutit aux bonnes places et permet à cette croissance et ces opportunités pour les peuples autochtones, c'est le travail du gouvernement. Alors, nous restons extrêmement optimistes par rapport à ce que nous allons devoir faire, mais nous reconnaissons que les choses difficiles peuvent être difficiles à faire.
Mr. Prime Minister, Michael Couture from Global National. Saran Azar, the father who allegedly abducted his 4 children, took them to Iran, told Global News that Interpol knows where he lives and that he would do this all over again. He's basically thumbing his nose at Canadian authorities and laws. I just wanted to ask you, is that your understanding of the situation presently, that he has the kids, Interpol knows about it? And what do you tell the kid's mother about what Canada is doing and what the government is doing to make any kind of progress to get the kids back?
Canada has been very intensely engaged in the situation of Alison Azar and her children. We have put diplomatic pressure directly and through intercedents. We have worked very closely, the RCMP, with Interpol. We have Global Affairs Canada tightly attentive on this file. This is a unimaginable situation for any parent to be put through, and we are working very, very hard to ensure that the Azar children are returned to their mother.
And very simply, what is your message to Saran Azar right now?
That for the well-being of his children, he needs to return those children to his mother, to their mother.
Prime Minister, thank you for taking our questions. I want to ask you about one of the first big decisions you're going to face, and that's on the Pacific Northwest LNG project on the West Coast. Wondering sort of what your feelings are and whether you have concerns about that project, what role LNG can or can't play as we try to reduce our emissions in Canada, and what you say to the opponents, particularly the Indigenous opponents of that project.
Well, Canadians understand that there is not a choice to be made between environment or economy. We need to do them both together. We need to build a strong economy while protecting and preserving our natural environment. That's what Canadians expect of us, and that's why we have put in place a robust evaluation process to ensure that economic development does not interfere or harm the natural environment, and making sure that we're able to do those things properly and the way Canadians expect us to is the task that this government has taken on, particularly after 10 years of failure of the Canadian government to actually deliver on protecting the environment and growing the economy. So we continue to be engaged with the robust process that we've put in place, and look forward to having more to say at the end of the process.
LNG specifically, is it clean enough for sort of a Trudeau-era economy?
Certainly, as we look to cleaner and more renewable sources of energy, we need to make progress on a broad range of issues. We know that in terms of emissions, coal is worse than oil, which is worse than LNG. But we certainly need to make sure that we are looking at the whole range of challenges and opportunities to improve our development of these resources, our exporting of these resources, and our use of these resources. Canadians understand we need to be more efficient, more responsible, more cutting edge, and that the jobs of the future and the economic growth of the future will depend on being innovative and forward-thinking about energy and about all different sectors of the economy, and that's exactly what we're going to be doing.
Bonjour, M. Trudeau, Joël Denis Bellavance de la presse. Vous allez entreprendre la semaine prochaine un important voyage en Chine, un voyage d'une dizaine de jours. Est-ce que ce voyage va servir à jeter les bases d'un futur accord de libre-échange avec la Chine? Est-ce que c'est possible et réaliste de conclure un accord de libre-échange avec la Chine?
D'abord, on a beaucoup de travail à faire pour remettre les relations avec la Chine sur un bon pied. Pendant 10 ans, le gouvernement précédent avait un certain niveau d'inconstance dans ses relations avec la Chine. Il passait de chaud à froid selon les dossiers et selon la journée. Et on sait que pour un pays petit comme le Canada, d'avoir une relation positive et qui va nous bénéficier avec la Chine, il faut avoir un niveau de prévisibilité et de solidité dans ces relations. Alors effectivement, il y a énormément de bénéfices potentiels au niveau du dossier économique, mais il va falloir aussi qu'on soit très très clair que les droits humains et la gouvernance et les préoccupations par rapport à la démocratie et les droits des citoyens et l'environnement sain et bien des enjeux vont faire partie de notre dialogue avec la Chine. Mais si nous allons pouvoir bâtir sur des décennies de relations constructives avec la Chine, nous devons de bien lancer cette nouvelle ère sur le bon pied, et c'est exactement ce que j'espère faire lors de ma visite la
Mon
semaine
collègue
prochaine.
voudra en anglais, si vous voulez.
Canada has a long and storied history of a constructive relationship with China that goes back decades upon decades. Over the past government's mandate, unfortunately, relationships with China were somewhat inconstant. They went from hot to cold, depending on the issue, depending on what we want to do is set a very clear and constructive relationships, while at the same time voice is heard clearly on issues of human rights, of labor rights, of democracy, of environmental stewardship. There is a tremendous amount of work to be done to set this relationship on the right path for the coming years, and that's exactly what we're focused on doing in this first trip to China.
Une autre question, M. Trudeau. Depuis que vous êtes Premier ministre, vous avez fait souvent l'appel à la tolérance, à l'ouverture d'esprit vers l'autre, et vous êtes même rendu à l'aéroport de Toronto pour accueillir les réfugiés syriens. Il y a un débat qui commence à faire rage au Québec sur le burkini, après la France. Je voudrais entendre votre réflexion là-dessus sur cette tenue vestimentaire et le débat qui fait rage un peu au Québec.
Pour moi, il y a des pays dans le monde où la tolérance serait essentielle. De pouvoir tolérer son voisin ou l'autre serait très important, mais je pense qu'au Canada, on devrait être rendu au-delà de la tolérance. Tolérer quelqu'un, c'est d'accepter qu'ils aient le droit d'exister, mais à condition qu'ils ne viennent pas nous déranger trop chez nous, là. Au Canada, on peut-tu parler d'acceptation, d'ouverture, d'amitié, de compréhension? C'est vers là que nous allons, et ça, c'est ça qu'on est en train de vivre à tous les jours quand on voit nos communautés diverses et riches, pas en dépit de leurs différences, mais bien à cause de ces différences. Alors, oui, il y a sûrement des petites controverses ici et là, comme toujours, des conversations que nous allons continuer d'avoir. Mais pour moi, le respect des droits et des choix des individus se doit d'avoir à la première place dans notre discours et dans nos débats publics.
Guillaume Saint-Pierre, QMI. Bonjour, M. Trudeau. Vous avez dit tout à l'heure que votre gouvernement avait fait quelques erreurs, mais qu'il était toujours prêt à en tirer les leçons. Vous faisiez peut-être référence aux frais de déplacement élevés de votre ministre de la Santé. Mais vous étiez dit le gouvernement d'ouverture et de transparence il n'y a pas très longtemps. Alors, est-ce que les Canadiens peuvent toujours faire confiance pour bien gérer l'argent des contribuables?
Justement, quand on fait une erreur, les gens s'attendent à ce qu'on s'excuse, qu'on l'avoue et qu'on fasse tout ce qu'on peut pour remédier à la situation et qu'on apprenne de nos erreurs pour ne plus en faire. Et c'est exactement ce qu'on est en train de faire. Les gens ne s'attendent pas à ce qu'on soit parfait en tout temps, mais ils s'attendent à ce qu'on essaye toujours de s'améliorer et d'être respectueux par rapport aux responsabilités que les Canadiens nous ont confiées de de bien servir les citoyens et c'est exactement ce que nous sommes en train de faire.
Give it in English as well.
What people expect of leaders, of their neighbors, of anyone, is that when you make a mistake, you acknowledge it, you apologize for it, you make amends, and you do what you can to make sure it doesn't happen again. That's what people expect of this government, and that's exactly what we're focused on being for people. People gave us their confidence to be able to serve them as their government, and we're going to do everything we can every day to be worthy of that confidence and trust.
Concrètement, est-ce que vous avez profité de cette retraite pour envoyer un message à vos ministres qui se tiennent derrière vous au sujet des dépenses justement de leur cabinet?
Je pense que ça a été un rappel pour nous tous de l'importance d'être très, très minutieux par rapport à nos responsabilités et à nos dépenses, mais c'est exactement ce que nous continuons d'être.
Anglais, s'il vous plaît.
I think this situation was a reminder for all of us to be extremely careful about our expenses and about the public trust that we wield, and that's exactly what it's going to continue to be.
Last question, dernière question.
Mr. Prime Minister, Carol Mulligan, the Sudbury Star, a lot riding on this question because the local media are not being allowed to ask you questions, whereas the national media have had at least 2 questions. So, on behalf of my colleagues, you mentioned that one of your key relationships is with Indigenous people. Why isn't the Ring of Fire higher on your priority list when it would bring jobs to youth, to Indigenous peoples, to Sudbury, where the unemployment rate is high, very high? Where is that in your list of priorities? Was it discussed this weekend at all?
We discussed a broad range of resource projects, but the central discussion we had on this weekend was relationships with provinces and territories. And as we well know, the Ring of Fire is a provincial initiative that the previous government, federal government, was extremely detached from and uninterested in. We have indicated time and time again that we look forward to being positive partners on resource development with the provinces and continue to look forward for opportunities to invest in the kinds of things that are going to bring jobs for Sudburyans, economic growth for the region, and indeed for the North in general.
En français, s'il vous plaît.
Okay. Nous avons discuté énormément des relations avec les provinces et c'est certain que le cercle du feu est un enjeu provincial ici en Ontario pour lequel nous sommes alignés de façon beaucoup plus positive que l'ancien gouvernement fédéral. Les investissements en infrastructure, les emplois pour des communautés, particulièrement des communautés autochtones, représentent une priorité pour nous et nous sommes toujours très ouverts à travailler avec la province de l'Ontario sur les projets qu'ils ont à ce niveau-là.
Mr. Trudeau, as a follow-up, the federal and provincial governments are funding a study of an east-west road in the Ring of Fire, which is really key to getting this all going. We were here in June. I know you don't know the details of every single thing your government is doing, but how is that study coming? When might we hear about that?
One of the key perspectives we've put forward on investing in priorities right across the country is that the federal government does not have all the answers as to what a different community or a particular region needs. We need to count on local experts, provinces, mayors like Brian, who are talking loudly and clearly about what their priorities are. When I was back here in April to make an announcement on the Maley Road extension, that wasn't because it was a priority for us in Ottawa. It was because we listened to what has been a decades-old priority for Sudburyans. So on infrastructure investments in general and specifically around Northern Ontario, we will work with local peoples, with municipal leadership, with the province, with experts to figure out what the best investments are that are going to benefit the jobs and the opportunities in the region.
S'il vous plaît.
nous allons toujours travailler avec les communautés locaux, avec la province, avec les experts pour investir là où le plus grand impact positif peut avoir lieu. C'est ce à quoi les gens s'attendent de ce gouvernement. C'est pas Ottawa qui a toutes les réponses. C'est un engagement ouvert avec les communautés, avec les citoyens pour suivre leurs priorités.
Take one more question.
Okay, so it's a little bit of a follow-up on the Indigenous people question. So your government and your cabinet are funding, you've said $8.4 billion to Indigenous people and their issues, but is your cabinet really in touch on a grassroots, a local level? We're hearing that there is a program in Elliott Lake and their funding has dried up, and it's an institution for university, college, and training for First Nations people. So we're hearing a lot of the national issues, but on a grassroots level, do you guys really have your thumb on that pulse?
Oh, absolutely. The work we're doing with Indigenous communities right across the country, listening to band leaderships, to regional chiefs, talking to local community activists as well. We understand how important it is to directly connect with young people, with elders, with people in communities right across the country. Our Indigenous Affairs Minister, Carolyn Bennett, has been crisscrossing the country, going to every community she can possibly pack into her schedule, not just to become aware of the needs and concerns across the country, but indeed to demonstrate that the federal government is interested in building this relationship so that concerns like this particular program are heard and addressed in a responsible way.
We're done. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
I'll take this too.
Awesome. All right. Thank
Sorry,
you.
Cameron.
Mr. Prime Minister, just wondering how your stay was at the dorms at Laurentian University. Did it bring you back to your days at McGill and UBC? And who did you room with?
Well, being Prime Minister room, so I was on my own, which was okay. The fact is, the opportunity to reconnect with crisscrossing the country, of making announcements, of working on a broad range of files. This was a great opportunity for collegiality. We had a bit of a floor party last night as we swapped what I did on my summer vacation stories, and we continue to demonstrate that our focus is on Canadians with all the confidence that they placed in us that we need to live up to. But Laurentian University has been wonderful hosts through this cabinet work session, and I look forward to returning here time and time again to announce further investments in the kind of growth and higher education that Canada is counting on to create opportunities for growing the middle class and those working hard to join it. Merci beaucoup tout le monde. Thank you very much.